Welcome to Riks Europe. University campuses have become a significant arena for political activism. A prominent ongoing topic of activism on campuses is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. All over the US and in Europe, anti-Israeli protests, or pro-Palestinian protests, if you will, are ongoing on university campuses. I'm joined by Mathias Leyssens to give us some more insights. You're a student at the University of Ghent and vice chairman of the fraternity KVHV. Welcome to Riks Europe.
Thank you very much.
So could you provide some insight of these recent so-called anti-Israeli protests or pro-Palestinian protests at university campuses, and what are the grievances of the students?
So all over the West right now, protests are happening at many universities and colleges. That's no different here in Belgium, in Flanders, both at the University of Ghent as well as at the VUB, the Brussels University, and the university in Leuven. There are all these protests going on who are claiming that there is a genocide going on in Gaza. Students are participating in these protests to condemn the Israeli government for what they claim to be this genocide. Now, my fraternity is not supporting these protests, since we don't believe we should be meddling in foreign conflicts which have virtually nothing to do with us. Now, it is important to note that on the 9th of June here in Belgium, both federal and Flemish elections will take place. And so what we believe is going on here is that this is a clear attempt by the far left to claim electoral gain. They tried the same in 2019 when the climate protests were happening and when there were also elections coming up. So we believe that the far left, which is steering these protests, is aiming at the Islamic vote.
How widespread are these protests becoming?
Well, they have gained more and more traction over the months. Here in Ghent, it started with a rather small protest, which would only last 3 days. That protest has been extended. It is still going on as we currently are speaking or talking. The universities have not yet made a decision on whether or not they will cut ties with Israeli institutions. The University of Ghent hasn't, and the University of Leuven hasn't. But in the meantime, the VUB, the Brussels University, has decided to cave to these protests, which in our opinion isn't right. The universities should decide for themselves if cooperation with Israeli institutions is beneficial. Purely on an intellectual and research basis, we don't believe that this decision should be made under the pressure of these protests.
And what have been the reactions of faculty members, administration, and what are the plans moving forward? How long will they be allowed to continue these protests?
Well, as of now, it looks like these protests will be going on indefinitely until the protesters and the students who are protesting get exactly what they want. Well, this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, frankly, because universities in the West seem to ignore the fact that these hundreds of students are illegally, mind you, occupying these campuses. And it's well established that the universities and colleges all over the West are dominated by leftist thought. So it seems they are letting these protests happen not by accident, but on purpose.
So how is it affecting the students that aren't participating in the protests? In many universities, they've made decisions to let studies continue remote or from home. How is it where you are?
So here in Ghent, lectures in the campus that is being occupied are still going on. However, it is not ideal for students who are trying to study there when there is music, there's chanting, there's constantly people moving about. It's not ideal at all for them to study in that kind of environment. Now, students who wish to speak up, who have a opinion that differs from the protesters, will be escorted off. There are security agents that they themselves employ for removing anyone who tries to go against the protesters.
Are any of these protests becoming threatening or violent? Are some students afraid?
There have been some incidents where students have tried to go against what the protesters want, have tried to remove banners, for example. However, this has not been met with kindness, and it seems that nothing is being done when protesters react violently, neither by the university itself, nor by police, nor by anyone.
Thank you, Mathias Leyssens, for these insights, student at the University of Ghent and vice chairman of the fraternity KVHV.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you for watching Riks Europe.